Welcome to the Baraza. Here we demystify the miseducation of Africa and Africans by tracing our roots, values, and dissect our social issues. Let's talk. In what must be history's most profitable venture, a collection of ancient texts spanning multiple faiths has been transformed into a multi-trillion-dollar global enterprise. This exhaustive investigation will lay bare how carefully crafted manipulation of sacred scripture laid the groundwork for widespread financial exploitation, a system so ingenious it would make even Machiavelli blush with envy. It all began back in 325 CE, when the Roman Emperor Constantine convened the Council of Nicaea. Now, this wasn't your average theological debate. Oh no, it was a high-stakes corporate merger of the spiritual kind. You see, at the time there were over 45 competing versions of Christianity, with hundreds of texts in circulation and political power hanging precariously in the balance. Let's just say, not everyone left that room satisfied. As historian Dr. Elena Rossi of the University of Rome explains, when the emperor called this council, it wasn't just a debate about doctrine, it was a battle for control. There were over 45 competing versions of Christianity, with hundreds of texts in circulation. The political power hanging in the balance was immense. What emerged from this high-stakes gathering was the first major divinely inspired edit of Christianity's foundational texts. Reincarnation doctrines? Gone. Women in leadership roles? Suppressed. Competing interpretations? Eliminated. Funny how those edits just happened to align so neatly with the interests of the ruling elite. According to Dr. James Morrison, a biblical scholar. Funny how divine inspiration just happened to align perfectly with royal interests, almost as if they were doing a little editorializing of their own. But the tampering of sacred texts wasn't limited to Christianity. Similar patterns can be found across other major faiths as well. In Islam, for example, scholars have long debated the authenticity of certain hadith or oral traditions that conveniently reinforce patriarchal structures and political authority. And in Hinduism, the Vedas and Puranas have been subject to selective interpretation and redaction to support elite interests. Fast forward a few centuries, and along comes King James I. Now, he wasn't just commissioning a Bible translation, he was creating history's most successful marketing campaign. Make sure to keep that church hierarchy intact, reinforce my authority, and maintain all those nice ecclesiastical terms, he instructed his translation committee. Gotta love how heaven's will aligns so perfectly with earthly power. As Dr. James Morrison notes, funny how the divine inspiration of the King James translation just happened to support the church's hierarchy and the monarch's authority. It's almost as if they were tailoring the text to their own interests. But the manipulation of sacred texts didn't stop there. In the 20th century, the New International Version, NIV, of the Bible emerged as the highest-selling translation of all time, with over 450 million copies sold globally. What's particularly ironic, however, is that the publishing rights for the NIV were actually leased out to for-profit companies, including ones with ties to Saudi Arabia's royal family. So even Muslim investors can now own a piece of the world's best-selling Bible. In fact, the highest-selling Bibles of all time are Take a moment to like and subscribe as we journey across the continent on a quest to not only change Africa's narrative, but also educate and entertain. But the exploitation doesn't stop at Bible publishing. In many African countries, it has become mandatory for children to purchase a Bible as part of their school supplies when joining a new institution. For example, in Kenya, there are over 40,000 primary schools and 10,000 secondary schools, with a combined student population of over 20 million. If we assume each student is required to purchase a Bible costing an average of $5, the annual revenue generated from these mandatory Bible sales would amount to a staggering $100 million. Apparently, the business of belief knows no bounds, reaching into the pockets of families across the developing world under the guise of religious education. Of course, once you've got the masses hooked, the real money-making begins. And there's no better place to witness that than the illustrious Vatican Bank. Take their recent scandal, Operation Holy Money, a €350 million property deal gone wrong, with missing Peter's pence funds and offshore account networks. Apparently, they were just following Jesus' example of multiplying loaves, fishes, and investment returns. An anonymous Vatican official, testifying at the trial of Cardinal Becciu, infamously quipped, "We were just following Jesus' example, multiplying loaves and fishes and investment returns." But the Vatican Bank isn't the only one cashing in on divine profits. Oh no, the prosperity gospel grifters have perfected the art of turning faith into fortune. From the Hillsong Empire collapse, with over $100 million in undisclosed assets and tax haven connections, to the Nigerian megachurches boasting private jet fleets larger than some airlines.
What's so brave a grown man getting dressed like a woman? That's not brave, it's a disgrace.
That's right.
You see, Hollywood is attracted to men like Jakes. Because Jakes they pay Jakes. Hollywood is attracted to the cotton candy merchant, Joel Osteen.
That's right.
Because the Jakes and Joel Osteen won't hurt or offend the sinner.
That's right.
They are not preaching the gospel. Let me say it again. They are nothing but motivational speakers.
These modern-day hucksters know how to exploit their congregations with crypto schemes, COVID-19 scams, and good old-fashioned tax evasion. As one sociologist, Dr. H.H.N, observed, "The tools may change, but the game remains the same." These spiritual entrepreneurs have learned that controlling information, and even time itself, is the true path to power. Suppressing ancient calendars, strategically placing religious festivals, revising historical curricula. It's all part of building a control matrix that would make the most diabolical Bond villain green with envy. The Chronology Research Institute has found extensive evidence of the suppression of ancient calendar systems, the strategic placement of religious festivals, and the deliberate overlap with pagan celebrations. They didn't just want to control space, they wanted time itself. And it's not just Christianity that's been subject to this systematic manipulation. Across the globe, from the subjugation of indigenous faiths in the Americas to the imposition of Hinduism and Islam on local cultures, the weaponization of belief has enabled vast wealth extraction and political control. In India, for example, the Brahmin elite have long been accused of selectively interpreting and editing the Vedas and Puranas to cement their social and economic dominance. Meanwhile, in the Islamic world, scholars have highlighted how certain hadith were likely fabricated or altered to bolster patriarchal structures and political authority. The numbers don't lie. According to the latest World Bank data, the total annual revenue generated by religious institutions worldwide amounts to a staggering $5.8 trillion. And that's not all. The tax-exempt properties owned by these spiritual enterprises are worth a collective $1.2 trillion. But perhaps the most eye-opening figure is the $820 billion that's donated to religious charities every year. Apparently, the faithful are more generous than even the most seasoned fundraisers could have imagined. Recent scandals have only further exposed the morally bankrupt nature of this system. From the Vatican Bank's Cardinal Casino and money laundering schemes to the megachurch meltdowns involving fraud, real estate manipulation, and abuse cover-ups, the truth is starting to emerge from the shadows. As King Leopold's ghost author, Adam Hochschild, noted of the Belgian Congo, when the missionaries came, the Africans had the land, and the missionaries had the Bible. They taught us to pray with our eyes closed. When we opened them, they had the land, and we had the Bible. This pattern of religious institutions being used as a tool for colonial exploitation is not limited to Christianity. Across the globe, from the subjugation of indigenous faiths in the Americas to the imposition of Hinduism and Islam on local cultures, the weaponization of belief has enabled vast wealth extraction and political control. Yet the tools may change, but the game remains the same. Digital surveillance, financial dependence, social pressure, and political alliances. These are the modern control mechanisms that keep the system perpetuating, even in the face of mounting evidence. As Dr. H.H.N, the sociologist, aptly surmised, the tools change, but the game remains the same. These spiritual entrepreneurs have learned that controlling information, and even time itself, is the true path to power. So as we follow the trail from ancient texts to offshore accounts, remember, the truth may be like a lion, but these wolves know how to keep it caged and sell the key. The greatest stories ever told have become the greatest profits ever sold. Thank you for watching. Join us next week for another demystifying journey.